This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Institute this afternoon for this event, which I know is going to be a most interesting one, and it's part of our Future Proofing Europe series, kindly supported, as always, by the Department of Foreign Affairs. I just want to note that at the outset, how much we value working with the department, and in particular on this series. And we're really delighted and honoured to be joined this afternoon by Cristina Gherasimov, who's the Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration and the Chief Negotiator with the EU of the Republic of Moldova. The Deputy Prime Minister will give us an address for, I'm not sure, we didn't discuss the length, but perhaps 20 minutes, 25 minutes. There's a bit of flexibility there. And then we'll have an opportunity to have some interaction, have some questions, observations from our audience here in the room. And you're all very welcome, I say again. And also those of you who are tuning in online on Zoom, you're also very welcome. You can ask a question if you're at home or in your office through the Q&A function. And those of you who are here in the room, of course, will be able to simply put up your hand and we will get to you. The discussion, and by the way, as we always say in relation to questions, if a question occurs to you when something is said, there's nothing to stop you. I mean, I'm talking about the Zoom audience, nothing to stop you putting in the question then rather than waiting until later on so that we can sort of bank them up and get to them when we have the opportunity. The presentation and the Q&A are both on the record, and we're also live streaming this afternoon's discussion. So if you're joining us on YouTube, there's all these different platforms that you can join us on, but if you're joining us on YouTube, you're also very welcome. So before I hand over to our distinguished guest, I'll just briefly introduce her. Cristina Gherasimov was appointed Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration and as Chief Negotiator with the European Union in January 2024 in the first instance, and reappointed to that role after the parliamentary elections held in September of 2025. She previously served as advisor to the President of the Republic of Moldova on foreign policy and European integration, as well as holding the position of Secretary General of the Presidential Office. In these roles, Cristina Gherasimov served as the President's Sherpa for several European and global summits and events, such as the European Political Community Summit, UNGA, and Moldova Support Platform, amongst many others. For a short period after that, Deputy Prime Minister Gherasimov also served as Secretary of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integration. There's a lot more I could say about her. She's taught at Rutgers University, conducted research, was Programme Manager in places like Chatham House and Transparency International, German Council on Foreign Relations. She holds a PhD in political science from Rutgers in the US. And as I say, there's plenty more we could say. But most importantly, she's here as Deputy Prime Minister of our country, and it's our great honour to welcome you this afternoon. Deputy Prime Minister. Sorry. Yeah, and thank you for that welcome. And I'm sorry, but I just would like, if you perhaps, Deputy Prime Minister, just proceed again. Before we go to your address, I neglected to say at the outset that it's also our great pleasure to have Fergus O'Barra, who's here from the European Parliament office here in Dublin, perhaps just to say a few words before the Deputy Prime Minister says hers. I'm sorry, I should have made that clear at the outset, by mistake. Please join us up here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. And it is indeed a pleasure to once again, work with the IIEA. I'm Fergus O'Barra, head of the European Parliament Liaison Office here in Ireland, based at Europe House down on Chatham Street and Bath Street. And tomorrow we will have the pleasure to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister to Europe House for an engagement there, initially with the diaspora, which is quite considerable here, but then we said we'll open it out to a much wider group because we want to also work on that general public awareness and support, in this case among the Irish population, but general EU population about the situation in our future member states. And it's always a pleasure, in coordinating this visit, but in previous visits to work with Ambassador Costaccia here. And I also see Ambassador Gherasimov from Ukraine. And those two countries in particular, from a European Parliament perspective, we say, you know, these are our future member states and very soon future member states. We had President Sandu address the European Parliament just a few months ago, and that's kind of very much the message there. If we can have earlier, faster integration of these countries, all the better. And you, Prime Minister, earlier when we were having a discussion, you were saying for you in Moldova, this is about security. Well, I think representing one of the EU institutions here in Ireland, our message and our role is also to try and transmit the idea that this is first and foremost about our security. Integrating Moldova, integrating Ukraine into the European Union is about European Union security. And that's a very important message. So with those brief words, thank you very much, as I say, for your visit here to Ireland and to us in anticipation of your visit to Europe House tomorrow. And we're looking forward to your speech. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. No problem at all. But thank you so much for the warm hospitality, dear Director White, for having us here today and speak about Moldova, about our enlargement objective as a union, but also from a perspective from a candidate country like the one that I represent today. But allow me to begin not with Moldova, but with Ireland, because Ireland's European path is one of the most remarkable success stories of our continent. Over the decades, EU membership helped Ireland expand its economy, attract investments, attract talent, and thus steadily increase prosperity and opportunities for all of its citizens. Today, Ireland stands as a confident, innovative, and global connector member of the European Union. For Moldova, this evolution is inspiring proof of the depth and breadth of the change that European integration can bring to a country. Last month, speaking at Europe House about your country's upcoming EU presidency, Minister McEntee recalled the historical transformation for Ireland brought about by EU membership. And in this context, she voiced strong support for Moldova and Ukraine to move forward in the accession process, for which I would like to express my government's sincere gratitude. Yet, what struck me just as much as the way Her Excellency articulated Ireland's vision for the EU, in her speech, she described Ireland's European policy as resting on three pillars, and that would be values, security, and competitiveness. Three pillars which capture with remarkable precision the moment that our continent is living through, and which also reflect Moldova's own European journey. So over the past 2 years, the people of Moldova have spoken clearly and repeatedly in numerous elections, be it parliamentary, presidential, or referendum. Through the 2024 referendum and the presidential elections of that same year, and again 2025 parliamentary elections, our citizens gave a clear mandate. Moldova's future lies in the European Union. We are Europeans, we speak Romanian, a language that is formally a EU language, and we live by and cherish the same values. Despite unprecedented attempts to derail our democratic processes, including via vote buying, heavy disinformation, cyber attacks, and the stoking of social unrest, there is now no longer any ambiguity in our direction of travel as a country. Especially since for us, this may be the last train, considering Russia's total disregard for other countries' independence, sovereignty, or territorial integrity. It may sound like we have a deep sense of urgency, and it is true. Therefore, let me start with security before turning to values. Because for Moldova, accession to the European Union is the only viable path to survive and thrive as a democratic state in the current global and regional environment. But please do not mistake urgency for anxiety. It is determination, and it is also geopolitical clarity on our behalf. Moldova's accession is not only about Moldova. It is strategically important for Europe as well, and for Ukraine also. It is about strengthening Europe's security architecture at a time when it has become very clear that Europeans must increasingly rely on ourselves. In recent years, Moldova has shown that even a small state can act as a security provider in times of profound crisis. We have managed refugee flows unprecedented for the region and for our country with solidarity. We have maintained stability under hybrid pressure, thus keeping our 1,200-kilometer long border with Ukraine safe. We have strengthened the capacities of state institutions tasked with ensuring security, and we have increased our defense spending. We will continue to do so. Therefore, I can confidently say a European Moldova would not be a burden for the European Union. It would be an asset. Now, let me reflect upon values. We fully understand the EU accession talks begin and end with the fundamentals. There can and should not be any shortcut on this, and we are very clear on this. One either does one's homework or one does not. So clearly, justice reform remains a core priority for our government, not because we do it for Brussels, but because we do it for ourselves. It is a key promise to our citizens and a key area in the negotiations process. But let me underscore it once again. We are not reforming our judiciary or our prosecution because the EU demands it. We are doing it because Moldovans deserve an independent justice system, more efficiently in its fight against corruption, and more transparency in public procurement in the use of public funds. We have also launched consultations on public administration reform aimed at streamlining local governments. This will take a couple of years, but we are very much determined to do it. Furthermore, this year in 2026, we aim to reach the closest possible level of alignment with EU policies across all negotiation chapters and policy areas. Where legislation is already in place, we will accelerate implementation. But what we have to maintain most of all is the momentum for our European journey at home. Over these past years, there has been a notable shift in public perception. For many years, EU accession was rather an aspirational yet quite abstract prospect for Moldovans. Today, we increasingly believe that accession is achievable in the near future. Our targets are ambitious, and I would say even very ambitious. But we know from experience that what initially appears impossible can become feasible with political will and administrative focus. Since submitting our membership application back in March 2022, every major milestone seemed daunting at first. Yet step by step, we have delivered, and we will continue delivering. There is full alignment of priorities and dedication across institutions, but speed cannot come at the expense of quality, of transparency, and legislative oversight. That is why civil society is involved every step of the way. There is an active dialogue between the government and the business community. In Parliament, we have finally established a standing committee on European affairs. This is working very closely with our Bureau for European Integration, but also with experts not only from Moldova, but from abroad as well. We have a large diaspora also, including in Ireland, and we are very open to working with everyone who has the expertise and experience necessary to bring us faster into the European Union. Before I turn to competitiveness, let me briefly reflect upon what I can call the elephant in the room, though not quite literally, but rather the public space more recently with the recent discussions that have emerged about differentiated integration or two-tier membership or front-loading benefits. Moldova wants to join a European Union that functions effectively beyond 27 member states. We welcome those discussions about internal reforms that are necessary to make enlargement sustainable and efficient for the entire Union. But full membership for Moldova, with equal rights and full participation in decision-making, must remain the clear and final destination. Anything less cannot substitute full integration. Why? Because it is the promise of full membership that shows that the European project remains transformative and credible. Now let me turn quickly to the third pillar, and that is competitiveness. For enlargement to succeed in today's Europe, it must rely on economic strength, built together by current and future members. As a result, our government is focused on accelerating economic growth and preparing our country to join the single market. We are very delighted to have access to a growth plan facility meant to reboot our economy. And we very much hope that the proximity to the war, the fact that our rule of law is not yet finalized as a reform, will not be impediments for investors coming and supporting economic growth at home. Significant progress has already been made, and the next 4 years will be a lot about economic growth. Once a strategic vulnerability, our energy sector has undergone a profound transformation. Only 3 years ago, Moldova was a country which was 100% dependent on Russian natural gas. Today, Moldova consumes 0 Russian gas. For a country that for 3 decades was absolutely vulnerable from this perspective, managing in such short period of time to achieve energy independence is quite something, and not by my words, but by colleagues from other member states and of course from Brussels. A new power line enabling Moldova to import electricity directly from Romania and the wider European Union for the first time, reducing vulnerability to geopolitical pressure, will finally be inaugurated this spring. And for several years now, we have no more pressure as we used to have before on behalf of Russia. Renewable sources have also become a key pillar of our energy mix. We're in the process of upgrading transport infrastructure and interconnections with the EU single market through new or modernized bridges at our border with Romania, as well as better roads and plans to revamp our railway system. Digitalization is also key for us. 70% of our government to business services are already available online. That's not only making it easier to do business, but also reducing the potential for corruption. Finally, I can say with some pride that our companies are already enjoying the opportunities of the European market. 68% of Moldovan exports last year were headed for EU member states. Moldova also joined the Single Euro Payments Area last October. And since 1st of January of this year, we're also part of Rome Like at Home area. To conclude, if we look again at those 3 pillars, value, security, and competitiveness, they're not separate tracks. They reinforce one another. Moldova is approaching enlargement with all these 3 in mind. We're strengthening our contribution to European security. We are determined to consolidate our democracy and the rule of law. And we are modernizing our economy so that we can compete and contribute within the European Union. The mandate is clear. The institutions at home are mobilized. Society believes in and supports this goal. Moldova has chosen Europe, and we are extremely grateful that we can count on our Irish friendship and cooperation for further support in this endeavor. Thank you very much for this, for your attention for these brief remarks, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. And we have about half an hour, a little bit more, for questions and comments. And we've a terrific audience here, I know, and I'm sure online as well, but we can't see you, but we know you're there. And I'm happy to invite questions. We've a number of members of the diplomatic corps in the room as well, and just welcome to all of them. I'll just single out the Ambassador of Moldova, if I may, who's here with the Deputy Prime Minister. Very nice to have you and the rest of your team here. And thanks for working with us so closely in the preparation of this event. We very much appreciate that. As I said, there are other ambassadors also in the room from the region and elsewhere, and perhaps they'll have an opportunity to intervene as well as they wish. But we also have some really impressive expertise actually in Ireland on the region. And I was going to go, if she doesn't mind, firstly, if Claudia doesn't mind, to Claudia Badulescu, who's the Government of Ireland postdoctoral fellow at the Centre for European and Eurasian Studies in the Department of Sociology of Maynooth, known to me as it happens. But I'm delighted. Would you perhaps like maybe to get us going with a question or an observation just from your expertise and your knowledge of the area?
Very much. Thank you both for introduction, and thank you so much for your presentation, Minister. It's such a pleasure to hear you, and I know you have a huge task under your responsibility and a huge mission to deliver. So best of luck with that. I am more of an expert into the EU support for capacity building in the administrative process and in helping candidate countries to reform in line with the EU's requirements for accession. So from that point of view, I was wondering, first of all, how satisfied are you with the support that the EU is providing you in terms of technical and financial assistance, the expertise that they send to Moldova to help you, to guide you in the process of reforming? What could be done better? What would you like to see improved in this process, mainly to increase the impact, but also the sustainability of the reforms on the long term in Moldova? And continuing with that in mind, what do you think is the most difficult terrain to reform? What and why? So what reforms are the most costly domestically, and where do you encounter the strongest resistance? And here I think of politicization, administrative bottlenecks, patronage, all that. And you mentioned earlier that there is a huge, very fast pace in terms of the reforms that Moldova has been undertaking. How does the administrative system actually absorb that fast pace of reforms? How much can it sustain? And again, what are the bottlenecks that you encounter in this regard in terms of reform fatigue, staff shortages, coordination failure, and also political consensus in this regard? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll invite you maybe to respond to those. Yeah. Quite a number of questions there. Yeah.
A lot of questions, but thank you very much for these remarks. When it comes to the support that we are already receiving, both from the Commission, but also from member states, I think we're very happy with what we are offered in terms of the technical assistance, in terms of the expertise that we can use to faster adapt to the European legislation, but also to implement it at home. Here, I would say that the growth plan comes in a volume or an amount of almost 2 billion euros for 3 years, but it's supposed to underpin our economy and the growth in our economy. At the same time, for the reform track, we do not have, as other candidate countries have, access to pre-accession funds. Neither Moldova nor Ukraine has access to these funds because we came in later than the current MFF cycle. Here, this is something that would have been more helpful because some reforms are very costly, and here I will refer to which of the ones are more difficult. I would say the ones that are capital intensive are very difficult, and here I think of reforms in a couple of areas. First and foremost, environment. You know that the volume of the acquis has grown significantly with the green agenda during the last couple of years. It's not easy even for member states to deal with the implementation of the new acquis. And for us, considering the ambitious timeline that we have set for ourselves, it's extremely difficult to prioritize these capital-intensive reforms in their environment. Another area is, of course, energy, because it's about infrastructure, transport, same way of argumentation, and of course, agriculture. Agriculture, because we do not, so even if we already export to the EU a lot, as I have mentioned, a bit under 70% of our total exports go to the EU market, we don't have sufficient equipment, labs, to be able to meet the phytosanitary conditions. So now we use someone else's labs, you know. Romania is very much generous in terms of letting us use their labs, Italy, and so on. But we need to build this capacity at home. And again, considering the ambitious timeline, this means a lot of money. And without the access to pre-accession funds, these chapters come across as very difficult for Moldova. What the EU could do more for us in terms of capacity building, public administration, I think here what's important is to start building a European modern administration, public administration. We have put the basics for it, and we will this year prioritize on developing a so-called EU Academy. This will have a couple of layers where we will have each public servant go through the basics of the European Union law, institutions, decision-making, and so on. Of course, in the next 3 years, as we harmonize our legislation with the European one, we need very targeted expertise on chapter-specific acquis. So this is another area where we would look into more additional assistance on behalf of the Commission, but also the member states. So there are certain directives that are easier than others, but there are some that are really monstrous. So for instance, you know, to really understand the impact of the Services Directive or the Waste Management Directive on Moldova in terms of the impact that it would have once we start implementing it, you really need more resources to come your way. So this is from the perspective of more central administration. If we look at local public administration, we know that basically 2/3 of the acquis will be implemented by local mayors. So here, you know, I think they are excited on the one hand, but on the other hand, also waiting to see what's coming their way. Here we'll have to develop a mechanism to better explain and help local public administration to absorb all of the impact of the need to implement the acquis locally. So these are areas where we would seek additional help. When it comes to, you've mentioned a bit the challenges and how it's going. You know, I would say, you know, yes, we're moving at a fast speed. Some say record speed. I have to say that I agree with that statement, but for us, it's really important not to compromise on the quality of the reforms. So while the negotiations track requires us to move very fast, for us still at home, it's important to keep up with the quality of those reforms. Why? Again, because we're doing it for ourselves. For instance, if we talk about complex reforms that take time, and I've referred earlier to the vetting process where we clean up our judiciary from corrupt judges and prosecutors, it takes time if you want to do it properly and you want to make sure you don't mess up with the professional careers of long-term judges and prosecutors, but who might also be corrupt. Of course, the system fights back because there are entrenched interests that have been developed in the system for 3 decades. And now you tell them that that's it, it's over. So of course, the system fights back. So we say that we have an invisible war at home with certain judges and prosecutors who do not want to let go of old practices. At the same time, we have judges who have massively resigned, so resigned en masse, they just left, and that has created a longer backlog than we hoped for. But this is, I mean, this is part of the process of a complex reform like justice sector reform. So here for us, you know, it's about finding the right balance between speed and quality. So it's very important not to move even faster if that somehow compromises the quality of the reform. So here I would just hope that the Commission, whenever it assesses us, you know, whether we are ready with the interim benchmarks or with the closing benchmarks, we would not be punished for that, for giving priority to quality rather than speed, but we would still be in a position to use this window of opportunity under this particular commission, which is so much pro-enlargement and still prioritizes this particular objective.
Thank you. Yes, John. Please tell us who you are and where you're from, even if we know they mightn't.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm John O'Brennan from Maynooth University. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. I wanted to ask you about the extraordinary theft which took place in 2014 from a number of your banks in Moldova. How successful have you been in trying to recover that money? I know that one of the principal figures involved is aligned with Russia and has had his fingerprints over lots of different activity in Moldova up to 2023 and even recently. But I wonder how successful you've been, because it was staggering, really. 12% of Moldova's GDP was stolen. €1 billion is absolutely extraordinary. So what kind of successes you've had? And secondly, looking ahead to the Irish presidency of the European Union, and given what Moldova experienced in recent years in the presidential, parliamentary elections and the referendum, what advice do you have for us about how prepared we should be for attacks by malign actors, whatever the nature of those attacks, but particularly hybrid attacks when we get to that point in the second half of the year? Thank you.
Thank you.
Paddy, back at the back down there. We'll take a couple together if that's okay. You seem to be well able to remember the questions that are asked. So thank you very much. Yeah, Paddy.
Paddy Smith, Irish Times. When there was discussion going on about Cyprus accession to the European Union, there was a lot of division about whether or not the whole of Cyprus should be allowed to accede, or whether it would do only the bit over which the government of Cyprus had control should accede. There seems to be there's a similar ambiguity about the Transnistria issue in Moldova, and I just wondered if you could explain to me how you see the divided country acceding to the EU.
I'll just tag on to that. David Whelan is asking you to expand on Moldova's breakaway region of Transnistria, which has 1,500 Russian troops, he says, acting as so-called peacekeepers rather. How much of a problem is Russian influence having on Moldova today? Perhaps we should pick up there and we'll come back.
Yeah. So I'll start with a page in our history that we are not very proud of, and that is indeed the bank fraud that made all the tabloids, I think, not only in Europe, but also beyond. We, at this point, have identified the main characters of the theft. One of them is Ilan Shor, who did his best to influence Moldovan politics until the very last moment, by which I mean these parliamentary elections, and he didn't manage. So first he flew to Israel, and then now he's hiding together with his criminal organized group in Russia. But at least he has publicly stated that he's no longer interested in Moldovan politics for now. That is one. Another one is still hiding in London, Vyacheslav Platon. And the third one was caught this summer in Greece, Plahotniuc, Vladimir Plahotniuc. He's the oligarch who captured basically all state institutions for quite a prolonged period of time in the 2010s at that time. And he's in prison. He's awaiting trial, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we will see an end to this trial. We've managed to recover part of this money, but it's quite insignificant if you look at the incredible amount that has been stolen. But I think, bringing this case to an end is crucial for Moldovans to again be able to hope in the fairness of the justice system. That's why for us it's very important to bring this case to a successful end, meaning to have a verdict for Plahotniuc, and later we will see the other ones who are still involved as we move forward. On your question for I'm not in a position to advise presidencies of, of the Council of the EU, but if there are some lessons that we've learned from our more recent experiences deriving from the hybrid attacks that we have been exposed to. First and foremost, disinformation and propaganda does not target only states like Moldova or states like Ukraine. Moldova and Ukraine might be the front line for actual war or for hybrid war, but the target is Europe. And I think everyone has to be very clear about that. Russia is not interested in Ukraine, and Russia is not interested in Moldova. Russia is interested in a weakened, fragmented Europe. That is what they want. And with every decision where we cannot achieve consensus upon, where we cannot have a united stance, that's a win for Russia. So if I can, make a kind request, it's to help under your presidency, as the previous ones are doing as well, to keep a united Europe standing, because that is what Russia does not want to see. This is what Russia fears. In Moldova, we managed to dismantle criminal networks. We managed to defeat Russia because we stood united, regardless of whether we supported Maya Sandu, whether we supported her party or not, but we stood united for pro-Europe, for a pro-European future of Moldova. That's what helped us, and I think that's what will help the EU as well, standing united for our values, not only in words, but also in deed. When it comes to Transnistria, to the Transnistrian region, I think here, if you look, Transnistrian region, let's say, is an area that is occupied by Russia, but by so-called peacekeeping troops to defend Moldovan neutrality. So basically to defend Moldova from itself. So a very neutral country with Russian troops on its territory. This is what we've learned in the early 1990s, that when Russians come, they never go. That's why it's important not to let them come. From this perspective, for us, it's not a conflict between people, it's not a conflict among people. Our residents in the Transnistrian region can freely come, work, study on the right bank, so basically in the rest of the country, whenever they want. Many, because of the challenges that they are facing today, they have day work in Chisinau or in other towns around, and then at night they go back home. So it's really close. Tiraspol is very close from Chisinau. Therefore, these travels, studies, these social engagements, the fact that they can use our social security system, This does not make the conflict a traditional classic conflict that you might have in mind. I was just mentioning earlier that out of those residents from the Transnistrian region of Moldova who voted in presidential elections, parliamentary elections, and referendum, 1/3 of them from the Transnistrian region voted pro-EU forces. 1/3, in the context where this region has never heard or experienced or practiced democracy at all. I see this as a very positive step forward. And considering that in good times, when they still used Russian free gas, their exports in an amount of 80% of the total exports were going to the EU. This says a lot about their integration, economic integration as such today, because they have issues with free Russian gas. This was how Russia was keeping this region alive. Now they export 70% of their goods. This is the latest number for 2025 to the EU. So from an economic point of view, the European Union has a huge leverage on the region, because basically they are dependent on the EU market. And I think this is a good thing. Now, all of this, you know, there is optimism to say that, look, as we get closer to accession, you know, we might be able to reintegrate the country. The government is working on the economic convergence of the region, you know, integrating the region in the economic system, national system. But we have the Russian troops there. We have the Russian troops that never left. And this is an issue where Moldova alone cannot find a solution. Therefore, we see integration and reintegration as two parallel but separate tracks for us. And a precedent like Cyprus, where you have the acquis being suspended on part of your territory, would also be an option that would work for Moldova as well.
Okay. I'm going to take two questions online. The diaspora has been mentioned a couple of times. So Tudor Kojokario, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the person's name. It says, building on your view that Moldova can be an asset rather than a burden for the EU, what concrete measures is the government taking to strengthen workforce competitiveness through upskilling and labour market alignment as Moldova prepares for EU integration? And that questioner is a Moldovan Romanian citizen living in Dublin, and is a talent development consultant at a global software company here in Ireland. And then allied with that, Marina Profir is founder of Connect MI, the Moldova Ireland Business and Professional Diaspora Network. Says, you highlighted competitiveness and economic growth as a priority for the next year. What structural reforms do you see as most critical to ensure that Moldova does not just integrate into the EU, but compete effectively within it? And how can the diaspora contribute? So those questions are sort of linked. But before I go to them, I think I saw somebody at the back there. Just, yeah, I'll take you as well. Yeah.
My name is Rina. I'm from Kenya. My question is kind of linked to what you've just asked. I'm specific to Moldovans. The literacy levels are quite high, I believe over 95%. What do you do as a government to make sure that there is no brain drain, so that you mitigate Moldovians to make sure that they build the country as opposed to going to abroad? And well done to what you've done so far as the first non-EU partner in the security partnership.
Really interesting question. Any others? Yes, sir.
It's really just about comparisons. You talked about security, obviously, and Russian infiltration, potentially comparing to Georgia and Georgian Dream. Is there any potential for that to arise in Moldova? And what are the connections, potential connections to actors like that, bad actors, I would say, in Moldova that would be connected to the Trump administration? What effect does that have on it?
So I'll invite you to address them, but can I just have an indication of anybody else who would like to ask a question or to intervene? I've got one there. Anybody else? Just to get, so I have a sense of how many more there are. Well, there's one definitely, and there might be another one or two. Yeah. So
I'll take them the other way around.
yes, yeah.
So on Georgia, I think Moldova was Georgia under Vladimir Plahotniuc. The fact that our citizens understood that the more you let those interests entrench in your economy, in your politics, in your society, the more difficult it is to get them out. So in 2019, 2020 and onwards, I mean, because both the opposition, I mean, very different views within the opposition united, even though they have nothing in common, like the socialists, communists, and Maya Sandu's party. They united forces to kick out Vladimir Plahotniuc and his interests. Of course, it's still a continuous fight because some of those interests still persist in various aspects of life, be it economy, politics, but we have advanced significantly in terms of de-oligarchizing the society, you know, be it mass media, be it economy. So we are trying to make sure that no monopolies of this kind are able to form again. So for us, we can only hope for our friends in Georgia to be able to find the will to take a stance, because this is an opportunity for all of the candidate countries that want to join the European Union to be used as such. And it's unfortunate that such an opportunity is being missed with such a political regime at home. You know, I always think of Georgia that we could have been in their shoes should we have had Plahotniuc during this geopolitical opportunity that has been provided to the candidate countries. So from this perspective, I hope that there is still a possibility for the Georgians not to miss this train. In terms of the brain drain, we are seriously investing in our schools, in our high schools, in our higher ed. Of course, we are not European level universities. We still have a lot of work to do. We're very aware of that. But for the first time ever, we have more students after high school remaining for a university degree in Moldova than leaving for a university degree abroad. And even though these are early signs, these are good signs. So from this perspective, I would say that any country that has 1 million citizens with Romanian citizenship, meaning EU citizenship, it's very difficult to keep them in the country. And to be honest, I would not like to keep our young people in the country. I myself studied abroad, and I think it's a huge added value to study, work in different countries, get to know different environments, different contexts, and then bring all of that experience back home. Therefore, I'd only encourage and recommend for young people to do that. But it's really important to know when you can contribute to your home society. And I think now it's the time for Moldova, for Moldovans also abroad, to contribute to their country. And this brings me to the first question on the diaspora. And for the part on the economy, I will first make a transition, but then for the part on the economy, I'll ask my colleague, State Secretary Oleg Bivol, to respond, because actually Oleg Bivol has just returned from Ireland, from the diaspora, from too many years living in Ireland, back home, and now is State Secretary at the Ministry for Economic Development and Digitalization. And this is only one of the many, many cases that we have in Moldova where people return, and we very much hope that more will return. On the, everything that we plan on the competitiveness side of things and what we do to support the labor force and so on. I mean, of course, if you speak in terms of, reforms related to the negotiation process, it's about the harmonization and implementation of the acquis related to the internal market, to competitiveness. So that's chapter 2 and chapter 3. That's what we are doing. We have a national program for the adoption of the acquis designed for 5 years, 2025, 2029, where we have front-loaded all of the adoption for these first 2 years, 25, 26, a bit of 27, and then we will only work on implementation. Hopefully that will strengthen not only the standards at home, but also our competitiveness as an economy. Hopefully that will lead to higher salaries, more competitive salaries. Hopefully that will become more attractive for many, many Moldovans in the diaspora that still chose a living abroad. But on the economy side of things, in terms of the priorities, maybe I give a very short word to Oleg to share what our priorities are for this year, because there are many, but maybe one or two, yeah?
I'd like to address the public and say thank you very much for being here. I'm Oleg Bivol. Actually, I've lived longer in Ireland than I've lived in Moldova, and recently I've embarked in this very exciting role as a state secretary, which proves that as much as those people at home who are very willing to embark this exciting journey toward the European Union, we'd like to put our own shoulders and together with those at home, make it happen. And we believe this is the moment and this is the right time. Now, when we talk about the economy, I suppose we aligning with a very ambitious government to engage in aligning our not just the values and security, but our economy as well. Therefore, the reforms are not required, but it's actually done for our own people and for our own diaspora, because we want them to come back home. There was 1 million people, and we kind of aware that they'll come when we can provide the same, if not better, living condition for them and for their families. Therefore, we're doing those reforms, and the reforms are directed toward stability, predictability. We are reforming not just the processes of the economy, but we have targeted, segmented parts of the economy. We're doing quite well in terms of digitalization. We're doing a lot of effort in terms of reforming our state-owned enterprises, and we have 2 very specific aspects of that. That's reforming the state-owned enterprises, making them efficient, and big part of that is the governance aspect of the state-owned enterprises. And then comes the experience of the EU member state, and that we talk about the efficiency, we're talking about accountability, and that's the 2 aspects we want to align with. We want to be seen as a strong state. We want to be seen as a state that can be seen as trusted, credible, and that's what we're trying to build now. That's the image we want to build toward the investors. When the investors, they come, they see a very strong partner, a very credible partner, a partner they want to do not just business, but put their input towards development of a country that soon will be a member state. Thank you very much for all the support, and if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer, even though I'm only in the 4th week of my of my role. So, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Terrific. Thank you very much. We are up on 3 o'clock, but there was one other question right there in the corner. And sorry, Senator, did you want to ask a question as well? I'll let you in directly after this question, and then that'll have to be it. We'll have a closing then from the Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. Diana here, Diana Accenti, coming from the energy and gas market. My question will be regarding the current energy situation. We know Ireland it's not, I would say, the best model because Ireland is still importing the electricity from UK through the interconnector. So what other models are you looking at? What type of the countries? Are you looking for the Baltic countries? What countries will be as a good example? And my second question is, can Moldova actually transition from Russian dependent? I know it has been done a lot. It has been done a lot regarding this, but how exactly you can become independently? Looking at the reforms that needs to be in place for the moment for the transition to the next to the net zero journey, which I mean all the members of EU countries are looking at the moment. Thanks.
That's great. And I will give the final question to, or comment to, Senator Conway right there in front.
Yeah, Gurmagat and Deputy Prime Minister, you're very welcome. And in my capacity as chair of the Ireland-Moldova Parliamentary Friendship Group, we have a very active friendship group, and I'd like to thank the Ambassador in particular for her ongoing cooperation and that of her team. And I believe I'm meeting you tomorrow officially along with the chairs of the Foreign Affairs and European Affairs committees. So we're looking forward to that engagement in Leinster House tomorrow morning. I visited Moldova in the last term. It was, I think, June 2024, where we engaged with yourself and other colleagues of yours. But what struck me most was the commitment of the ordinary people on the ground in Moldova, people we met in the hotels and in the shops and just in general. And, you know, that commitment among the people of Moldova has been very much reflected in elections, in the most recent election and indeed a referendum as well. So I suppose as we approach and take over the presidency in June, you know, we certainly will be doing everything we can to support you in your endeavours. And I have to say, even since we were there in the delegation that was led by the Ceann Comhairle at the time, Shauna Farrell, I have been most impressed with the work that's been done in the 18 months since. And absolutely, it's been done with speed, but I would not at all question the quality. I think the quality of the work that's been done has been phenomenal. So don't slow down, because the quality is there anyway. And we're certainly looking forward to our engagement tomorrow.
Thanks very much. I will just try the patience of the Deputy Prime Minister. I'm not sure she has a schedule. She needs to be somewhere, but maybe just another question down at the back would be great.
Thank you. My name is Jana Kovac, co-founder of the Connect Moldova Ireland NGO. And my question is, you mentioned about the higher education, like it's not the same level like in EU. My question is, what are Moldovan's government strategy to align the higher education to the EU standards to be able to attract EU citizens to study in Moldova? Thank you.
Very good. I think we will have to wrap it there given the time. Now.
I'll again go backward maybe.
Sure.
But Moldova is now part of Erasmus+, so anyone who wants to come and go can do that. But indeed, I think we need to work a little bit more on the conditions for attraction to be better. And here I mean everything from you know, student dorms that need to be repaired, university equipment, facilities, and so on. So indeed, we have more students who go abroad, use Erasmus+, but less who are actually coming to Moldova. For us, I think it's really important in the next years ahead to increase the level of teaching. So here, you know, because the salaries have been disastrously low for too many decades, many people have left the system and very few wanted to join the system. Therefore, you create this circle of that you need to break at some point. Therefore, it's you know, it's a priority to gradually but steady increase the salaries of professors, but also to attract professors to teach not only in Chisinau but also outside of Chisinau. This is slow, but it's coming along. Again, this needs more patience because it's still about people choosing this rather than us forcing them like it used to be in the Soviet Union. So this is on the higher ed. Indeed, very nice to meet you today, but we have a meeting tomorrow, and thank you for your encouragement, for the good words. We will indeed continue with the speed and with the quality. And everyone is very much welcome to come to Moldova to visit us, because we are a tiny country that I'm sure many have not even thought about visiting. But at one point, I think, now that we have so many direct flights, literally every day, a couple per day, it has to be both ways, not only from Moldova to Ireland, but more also the other way around. And in terms of the strategy on our energy, I think energy efficiency is one thing, a huge priority for us for the years to come. We have a lot of very old Soviet buildings, and even though we are now using to save more than we saved before, this is something where we still have a lot to do in terms of energy efficiency projects for old Soviet buildings. We have very low capacity to generate energy from domestic sources, and I know that there is interest to explore that, but we are not that much, solar and wind is something that is more attractive for us. Therefore, from a renewables perspective, we're trying to increase its share in the total mix, but it's not easy. We had a few instances in the last year where our consumption was fully covered by renewables, of course, when it was daylight, sunny, but it's a lot for a country that was 100% dependent, on Russian energy. So yes, these are instances of pride. We take them as a moment to enjoy, but then we continue working. So we need to work more on balancing power. That's an issue that we have, and on building more electricity, high voltage lines with Romania to be less, to less depend on the transit of some of the lines via the Transnistrian region. So it's not an easy. I understand why it might be also more complex and slower maybe than many would expect also in Ireland, but these are indeed very long-term complex projects that take time, and unfortunately young people don't have a lot of patience for time.
Sure. Well, look, I just want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister for what's been an incredibly interesting, informative for me. I mean, there's a lot of experts in the room who know the topic, but it's been a terrific hour, and we had some engagement before we came up here as well. So it's been terrific. If you're in the persuasion business, I suppose I think I can probably speak for the audience in saying that you have been very persuasive in the sense that not just the case, the positive case, but also your frankness in recognizing what the challenges and difficulties might be, and that things that need to be overcome, and you haven't been shy about identifying them and surfacing them as we're in the discussion. So I think it's been a most interesting and refreshing, and I hope to you and your team helpful engagement, which we're always delighted to have here at the Institute, to have these kinds of engagement and the kind of audience that we have. So please show your appreciation to the Deputy Prime Minister of Glasgow.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.